Hi, this video is just me playing with some more CSS stuff for my 2017 class. So I've started off with a super simple kind of template thing. So this is, oops, it's not that one, it's this one. So I've got my screen cut in half so I can see my code and I can see my page as I make changes to it. And this here is just a template of a real simple web page, and the only bits I'm going to play with here are these three words, which are heading, text, and text, which on the page are up there. Oh, I suppose I could play with the picture too. I just separated these ones out so it was easy to show you what I'm doing. That's the basic page. Then I did set up my style sheet. So the second version of that web page, I'll flick across to it now, don't get a fright. I've added some divs around these three lines of text just so that I've got more control of them, and they look like now like this. So I've got the first div which just has that word heading in it, the second div which just has the word text, and the third div which also has the word text. So those divs are now around these three lines of text. The other thing I've done, which I'll show you in a second, is I've linked it to a style sheet called Style 2, and Style 2 so far I've set up, and it's got the three divs that link with these three divs here. See how in purple they're called header, some text, and more text, and in the style sheet I have header, some text, more text. I've also applied a style to anything in the page that's H1, which applies to that heading there, and I've told it the color should be blue, which this isn't the live page, I'll show you it in a minute. And to the body of the page I want everything in Arial, just because I really hate Times New Roman. So now that I've got that style sheet applied, this is what the page looks like. So it's exactly the same, but it's in Arial, and anything that's H1 is blue. So now we're going to look at some positioning because of these three. We're going to use these three, what do you call them, sections of the code to change the position of these three words. And I'm going to pause you while I do a few changes on the page, just a tick. Okay, next, because I like to see what I'm doing, I've put some a color behind each div. Now these aren't necessarily there permanently, they're just so that I can see what I'm doing, and I might decide to delete them at the end, or if I really like them I might leave them. So those three colors, now that I reload the page, they just show which div, which one of these sections is which color. Actually, what else I might show you is code commenting. In HTML, you can add comments to your code, which means that people reading your code can see the comment, but it does nothing in the program. It's the same in CSS, but the code is slightly different. This time it is, I think, divide times, and this one is blue, and times divide. Okay, and it's in green, means it does nothing to the page except whoever's reading the code can understand it. And I'm going to say this one is purple, and this one, what colour was that one? Green. Okay, and I still haven't even got near showing you what I wanted to show you, which is the layout. Okay, pausing you again while I make a... There's one more thing we need to go through before we go into where we put these, how we move these around the page, is how we set up the shape and size of them. I've prepared a few little examples. Firstly, we have the size of the actual box, and I'm just working on the blue one, the header one. And let's just try setting the width of it. Now I could use percentage, which will give me the percent of the width of the page, or I could use pixels. For width, I quite like percentage because, hang on, because like I've made it 50%, which looks really silly, it's only half the size of the page. But the thing I like about percentages is as the page gets bigger, the box will get bigger. I wonder what it will do when it gets, oh okay, it won't get any smaller than that. Okay, so I've used percentage for that. Maybe for the height I'll use a pixel so I can show you what it does. So for that box I've given it a height of 100 pixels, which is quite tall. Let's just show you. Okay, that's how tall it is. Now, the space around the outsides of the boxes sometimes wants to be changed, so let's carry on pasting back in what I had ready to go. Now, okay, so the margin is the space outside the box, and I'll show you what that looks like. This box will now move slightly away from its edges in all directions. Each of these 4 numbers, you can do a separate space, so it goes top is that first number, the right hand side, the bottom, and the left hand side. Don't ask me why they do it in that way. You can also, if I just, like these are all the same, I could have just said 20 pixels and it would, I think, let's just test this, save F5 to reload. Yeah, it does exactly the same thing. So you can just put 1 if they're all the same, or you could put 2 and that would be top and bottom. So the first one was 20 and the side to side one I wanted to be 10. Let's see what that does. So if you do just 2 numbers, it reads it as the top and bottom edges of the box and the left and right edges of the box for the second number. So let's just try that. Did that even do anything? I couldn't see any change. Anyway, we're going to go back to just 20 pixels in all directions because I want to move on to the next point, which is padding. Now padding is, hang on, where am I? Oh, it's gone off my clipboard. I have to do it by hand, the old-fashioned way. Okay, padding is the space inside the edge of the box. So we just used margin to adjust the outside of the edge of the box. Now we're going to adjust the space, oops, wrong button, the space that whatever's in the box will shift away from the edge, just because that's annoying me, touching the edge like that. So I'm going to give it a 10 pixel gap around all 4 sides, and hopefully it'll shift the words slightly away from the edge. Cool. It also shifted the box slightly because I had been playing with that one. Anyway, now I have my box size for that one. I do believe I want to make all of them the same. So I'm going to just copy the, do I want to change the heights of them? I think I will leave the height like it is as auto of these other 2 boxes, because these other 2 boxes I believe will stretch as I add text into them. Actually, let's just experiment with that. Hang on, we will just, first of all, on the purple one, I'm just making the width the same. Oh, that's annoying me now because it's touched too close to the edge. Okay, I'm also going to give it the same margin and padding. Copying and pasting is your friend, don't forget. Oh, how annoying, my layout is not making me happy. Okay, that second box now should look kind of similar to the other one, except the height. Now the reason it's gone taller is just because the padding, I've given it 10 pixels on all sides. But I just want to experiment. If I was to add more text into that box, so I'm adding more words, and I think I'll put some line breaks between them, just so that they'll drop down a line, because that's what I'm trying to show you. Okay, we have now got a few more times in this box the word text, and see how the box resized itself to fit what was in it. And for a paragraph box, that is what I want to happen. So I'm going to get rid of some of that because I don't really need it anymore. It was just to show you. Okay, so now we have a box with some text in it. Now we're finally, I do believe, up to the bit where we can shift these things around on the page. Now, 2 ways of doing it. One simple one would be, even though it's kind of, actually I'll show you the super simple, then I'll show you the simple. If you put margin auto, for some reason, don't ask me why, it centers things. So let's just try that. We're back on our header box now. It's centered it. But if you didn't want it centered, you wanted a certain distance from the left and the right, you could, you can break this down to margin, I do believe, hang on a minute, why is it not popping up for me? Oh, that's what I'm after, margin left, semicolon. Okay, so say I didn't want it auto, I wanted it, I don't know, 50 pixels from the left hand side of the page, and that would hopefully adjust it to a certain to the exact point across the page I want. So let's just experiment, turn that into 100, see if it should shift it further across to the right. Yeah. So you can fine tune your position if you don't want it just centered. If you do want it just centered, remember it's what we did a minute ago. It was margin auto. That's for centering things. Otherwise you can break it down by doing the left hand side margin, the width of the box, etc., etc. So that gives you the margins and the padding, like the outside edges of the box. It also gives you the positioning of the box, mainly just using margin. The other thing is if you want two boxes to go side by side, that's the last thing. And that one I always get slightly muddled up with, but it's something to do with float. So let's just try float left. It may not be enough. I may have to do something to the other box as well, especially because... Okay, so sorry, I paused you for a minute because it did take me a bit of mucking around to get this right. See all my little W3 Schools tabs open because that's my go-to whenever I get stuck. Okay, so there's three things I added. I added a float left on the blue box, the header. I added a float right on the purple one, and I did a clear both on the green one, which otherwise they were kind of overlapping and it was annoying me. And I'm not an expert at floating. It is something I want to get better at. The other thing I changed, I mucked a bit around with the widths of them. See how there's this gap in between them? That annoys me a bit. So you would probably want to experiment with your widths until you... Oh, okay, made it too big. Close up the gap, but don't make it too big, otherwise it drops. If they both get too wide, they can't go side by side. No, still not enough. So see what I'm doing? I'm just shrinking this little box until they go side by side without too much of a gap. The gap that is there is because of the margin that I've put on them. So if you really wanted that gap to go away, you could change the margin. If I wanted them to be exactly the same height, I would see how the top one has a height of 100. I'd do the second one. Anyway, blah blah blah, lots of information, probably confusing you right now, so I think it's time to end this video.